Hello, everybody. This is Jenny Parks from MEC. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar called 5 Books in 4 Years, How Do We Do It? And we are joined by some folks from the Wisconsin Technical College system who will be telling you all about their amazing OpenRN project. They received the Open Textbook Pilot Grant from the feds a couple of years ago and have made great use of those funds. Very excited to have them with us. I'll just remind everyone that the presentation slides are available in the handout section of your control panel, which you'll see it at the bottom of the little control panel that has come up for you in GoToWebinar, and that there will be an email sent to you following the webinar that will have a recording. If you want to ask questions during the presentation, and we do highly encourage that, please use the little questions function in your control panel. We don't have a chat function in GoToWebinar, but we will be keeping up with your questions and answering them if we can, those of us behind the scenes. And then we will also make sure that our presenters hear your questions and can answer them as well. Then finally, when you do receive the follow-up email, there will be a short survey asking you to reflect on the quality and content of the webinar. Please complete it and let us know how we're doing. We want to make these very valuable for all of you. So I think we are about ready. It is 1:01. We like to start on time, so I'm going to do that again. Welcome, everybody. This is Jenny Parks from MEC. You have joined 5 Books in 4 Years. How do we do it? It is the last of our 2020 OER webinars at MEC, and we are excited today to have our presenters from the Wisconsin Technical College system. A few reminders before we get started. The presentation slides and some other handouts are available. Just take a look at the bottom of your control panel. Also, you will receive an email following this webinar, and you will see on it a link to a recording of the webinar, and you'll also see a link to a survey we would like you to complete to let us know how we're doing and how we can improve our webinars. And finally, during the webinar, if you have any questions, please use the question section of your control panel. That's where we will take a look and we can either type you an answer or ask it directly of the presenters. So without any further ado, I will ask Everett, who is behind the scenes, to advance the slides. Thank you. That's me, Jenny Parks, Vice President at MEC, and today's presenters for the Open Resources for Nursing Grant Project. Kim Ernstmeyer, the director, and Vince Mussehl. Is it Mussehl, Vince? All right, lead librarian. So I'm going to turn it over to these fine folks and let them tell you about all the great work they're doing.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Vince Mussehl. I'm the lead librarian for the OpenRN project, as Jenny mentioned, and with us today is Kim Ernstmeyer, the project director for the OpenRN project.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today.
Today we're going to talk just a little bit about how we're producing these 5 books in only 4 years, and provide you with some details and some projects background on the project as well. So to start off, we are going to do a poll to see who's in the audience today. Everett, if you can start the poll, it would be great.
Thank you, guys. This is Jenny again. I will go ahead and read this to you in case you need that accommodation. Question number 1, who is in our audience today? Please select one. Are you a faculty member, librarian? Are you in the teaching and learning division, in administration, or do you function in some other capacity at your institution? Go ahead and make your selection. As we collect your answers, we will see how many. All right, we've got a 90% response rate.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a look at our results. All right, who is in the audience today? 24% faculty, 30% librarians, 5% teaching and learning, 32% administration, 8% other. So our winners today are administrators, awesome administrators. Really great that you're here. It's great that everyone's here. All right, do we have another poll question?
Yes, we do. We have one more.
All right, question number 2. Are you representing a nursing or other health-related program? Please select one, yes or no. Okay, it looks like we've got an 86% responding so far. You want to let us see those results, Everett? Oops. 79% of those responding are from a nursing or a health-related program. 21% are not. Okay, well, it's great. You're going to find this tremendously helpful regardless, but if you are in a nursing or health-related program, it'll just be that much more valuable. So let's go back to Kim and Vince.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing. And advance to the next slide here. All right, so just a little bit about the background of the project. As many of you know, the prices of textbooks have been increasing substantially over the past 10 or even 20 years. This little chart kind of highlights that, how textbooks have gone up exponentially compared to all items, and even more so than tuition and fees. So as a way to combat this issue at our institution, CVTC, which is the Chippewa Valley Technical College, partnered with some other technical colleges from Wisconsin to write one of the first grants for the Open Textbook Pilot Grant, which is a Department of Education grant. We applied in September of 2018, and then we were awarded the grant in March of 2019. In the grant, we're charged with creating 5 OER textbooks, all in the nursing realm. Our first book was just released last summer, Nursing Pharmacology, and then we have 4 more on the horizon. Along with that, we have 25 virtual reality scenarios. We're currently working on those, and those will be released soon as well. We anticipate that the project will affect over 5,700 students just in Wisconsin, saving them an annual $1.5 million. The project, just for a scope of the scale of the project, all 16 of the technical colleges in Wisconsin are involved, along with others outside of Wisconsin, and we have over 200 reviewers, contributors, etc., working on this project. So it's quite large.
So we do get asked frequently, how do we do this? How have we planned this and scoped out the project, and how are we creating these textbooks? And I do want to emphasize, please ask questions as we go. We do wish this to be a conversational format, so feel free to put those questions through. What we've done is organized a presentation according to the priorities that were established in the next round of funding for the Open Textbook Pilot, just to give everyone who's considering applying for funding some ideas that we've done according to each priority. So as Vince mentioned, there are 16 technical colleges within Wisconsin. Of those 16, 4 are the lead colleges for the grant, and CVTC is leading the overall grant. So we already had some infrastructure set up before the grant got started. We do have a statewide nursing curriculum, which was very helpful. The textbooks are completely aligned with the course outcomes and performance criteria for each course that the textbook is used for. We also already have existing meetings set up with the nursing deans from all 16 technical colleges. We meet semi-annually, and there's also a statewide nursing curriculum committee. So all of those aspects have helped just establish the collaboration right from the start. Another resource that we have that was established was the WTCS OER network, and that's managed by Hillary Barker, who I believe is in the audience today. So she is available for questions related to that too. But that's also been another collaborative platform that's identified OER champions from all 16 technical colleges in all different departments, shares different OER resources, and actually did some survey data about a year or 2 ago that was very helpful in identifying the high enrollment courses and student awareness and faculty awareness of OER in addition to administrators and librarians. So that's kind of the overall collaborative framework for how we got started. And then from there, what we did is we've asked faculty to collaborate. And so we've invited faculty from all 16 technical colleges, but the lead 4 are the ones that help, especially with developing the textbooks. So we've offered 3 different roles that faculty can participate in developing these textbooks. One is the developer role, and they're the ones that are truly pulling together the content for each chapter. We have the contributor role, and I'll talk more about that here in a second. And then we have the reviewer role. So what we've done is put together work groups for each textbook and also the virtual reality project. We meet monthly using various screen share products, and the contributors of the work group discuss learning content. So we help flesh out the learning objectives that all 16 colleges cover for each course competency, and we level the content. And so these are instructors that are actually teaching the courses. They know what students struggle with. They know the key concepts that students need to know to be successful. So that's the contributing part of the work group. And then individual instructors are in charge of developing the content using Google Docs. By using Google Docs, everyone can view the document and add comments as we go. So that's been very helpful in our collaboration.
Kim,
yes.
Kim, and I agree, all of the amount of alignment and coordination that you guys have amongst your programs is key to scaling and really being effective with this project. We do have a question from someone in the audience asking,
Okay.
are all of the schools granting ADN degrees? Are any of the Wisconsin programs BSNs? Are any of the BSN programs in this project?
So the way it works with the Wisconsin Technical College system is they're all ADN programs. Some programs also have a 1+1 configuration. So the first year of the program, students can graduate and get their LPN license. And then most of the colleges, especially the lead 4, have articulation agreements for students to be able to complete their BSN and transfer all their credits into the university systems.
Got it. So again, a lot of consistency and alignment, which again really helps.
Yes, great question. Okay, we can go ahead to the next slide. Any other questions on collaboration? Feel free to put those forth. Okay, so another priority of the grant application process is addressing gaps. So when the original grant application was created, high enrollment courses were identified, and that's how nursing was selected. And then we looked at the prices of the different textbooks used in the nursing program. And we discovered for an average amount was about $1,500 for nursing textbooks, which is pretty steep for our students. So we selected the 5 textbooks based on the costs and also where they fall in the program. So these first 3 textbooks that are being released, Nursing Pharmacology, Nursing Skills, and Nursing Fundamentals, are all in the first semester of the program. So we find that to be, we expect that to be especially helpful for first semester students because that's where the retention tends to be a challenge as students determine, is this truly a program that they want to complete? And there's a high cost of textbooks as they're determining that for themselves. We've also discovered there a need for more faculty awareness for OER and what it is. So Vince designed the OER 101 course that we offer to everyone across Wisconsin. So I'm going to let Vince talk about a little bit more about that course.
Right. So as Kim mentioned, we were charged with kind of advocating for and educating and promoting awareness to faculty in Wisconsin. So as a way to do this, we looked at doing an online asynchronous course. So there's a short 10 to 15 hour component of this course where faculty participate in a Canvas, like a Canvas session, And really in this course, the participants look at the who, what, where, when, why, and how of OER. We find that a lot of faculty have misconceptions about OER. Perhaps they think it's online learning resources instead of online education or open educational resources. So it really helps to clear some misconceptions, and it also kind of helps them feel confident and learn more about OER and the creation process or even the adoption process and so forth. Towards the end of the course, faculty actually make action plans, and they have like a pathway for them to go once they complete it. Also, there's, aside from faculty, there's many other participants, including librarians. We've seen instructional designers, different administrative employees such as deans. So just a great diverse group of individuals that want to learn more about OER and developing it. And if you're interested in the course, you can actually go to the OpenRN webpage, which we'll share at the end of the session here, and you're welcome to enroll. It's completely free. It's not only for Wisconsin participants, it's open to anyone. So you're welcome to look into that if you like.
That is great, thank you. Can you remind us who the lead 4 institutions are one more time on this work?
Sure, it's CVTC, Gateway Technical College, Madison Area Technical College, and Northeast Technical College.
All right, and one more question, couple more questions. For the OER course you were just mentioning, Vince, does that have a CC BY license?
It does have a CC BY license, and it's also located in the Canvas Commons.
Awesome, because yes, people weren't wondering about that, and you answered the question. It is available for others, and they can access the course materials. Great, thank you.
Just to elaborate more on the course, I think it's offered 4 times a year, Vince, and every time we've had
A couple
35
sections.
to 70. Yeah, we've had to double up the sections because we've had so much interest in it. And I think it really helps. The feedback I'm hearing back from faculty are, you know, they knew that OER meant less expensive textbooks to students, but when they learn about all the factors that contribute to student success overall, it adds even more motivation, I think, to including more OER into their courses. So that's been a wonderful resource. And since it's been released, we actually ask especially the developers to take that course so they have a broader view of what OER is. But we really encourage everyone in the work groups to complete it as well.
Before you are finished with this particular section about the course, we have a question. Who facilitates the course?
Yeah, actually, I designed the course and facilitate it. So as Kim mentioned, it is promoted 4, maybe 5 times a year, depending on the cycle. And the course was developed, again, I created the course, but it was reviewed by other OER experts in Wisconsin and faculty as well to kind of have that faculty lens from them.
You know what? We can make sure that when you are offering that, we'll put it in the MEC OER newsletter too. That way everyone can see it.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think another thing I'd like to elaborate on is we found that if faculty did look at OER previously, you know, there were some misconceptions maybe about quality, or maybe at the time the quality wasn't that great. And that's one thing we like to continue to reinforce, is that OER is constantly being developed. There's many other resources that are being added every year. So we encourage faculty, if you looked at OER before and weren't impressed, don't think that it's still that way. There's a lot of new resources that are out there. One thing that we do on our OpenRN website, we have a Twitter account, and what we do is follow other OER developers. And so if anyone wants to follow and see things as they are newly released, we retweet that information, because otherwise that is one of the challenges of OER, is finding these resources. And we'll share a little bit more about that near the end of the presentation, but I did want to mention that. So going back to gaps, another way that we address gaps is we have an OpenRN advisory committee that is composed of industry members from across the state of Wisconsin. So we have nursing deans, we also have nursing administrators, we have bedside nurses, and we actually have a few students that participate too. And we looked at that committee, especially to help us identify what do new nursing graduates tend to need to know that maybe they don't have much practice in while they're in nursing school to practice. So one thing that was immediately identified, for example, was de-escalating patients and family members that are becoming agitated. It's something that they generally don't get experience in doing during clinicals. And so we took that nugget and we're basing a lot of our virtual reality scenarios on that component. So as students are completing tasks, they also have to use those soft skills and communication skills in helping de-escalate situations that are becoming tense. So they have a way to practice these high stakes situations in a safe, low stakes environment. So the advisory committee has been very helpful in addressing gaps. Another thing that we found very helpful, especially as we developed our first textbook, was a national peer review process. None of the faculty have had experience in writing textbooks, and honestly, it was a big learning curve. Everyone knows how to write professionally, but writing a textbook is a different skill set. So after we created the first version of our textbook using Google Docs, and then we uploaded it into a software product called Pressbooks, we piloted it at the lead college's courses, and we also released it out for peer review. And we selected peer reviewers who had volunteered by signing up on our website, registering for more information, and indicating interest in being a peer reviewer. We provided a rubric that they could go through and complete as they read through, through the book. And then we also used another software platform called Hypothesis. Hypothesis is an annotation tool that's used in education, but we learned at the Open Ed conference last year that some of the other OER projects were using it for peer review, because the peer reviewers can go in at a sentence level and provide very specific feedback if they found areas of content that maybe still seemed unclear for an entry-level student, or if there was additional material they suggested, things like that. And so we were able to use, we had over 30 peer reviewers participate from across the country in that first peer review process, and that was very helpful in just ratcheting up our quality another level. For example, we added some things like consistent patient education in all the sections of the chapters relating to medication. We included an answer key at the end of the book so that if students were doing it offline, they could see the answers, as part of a formative assessment process as they did it. So that was also very helpful. Another gap, the final gap I'd like to talk about, is the different versions that we provide of OER. So one reason we selected Pressbooks was because students can read the ebook online, but they also have the option of downloading PDFs, reading it on Kindles, things like that. And what we discovered after we created our first ebook is research that indicates 65% or more of students actually still prefer the print version. They like to have that hard copy in their hand as they're reading. And we've discovered now with COVID, this has become even more important for our rural students who don't have great internet access. They really need a print version that they can read at home, and then they can complete their online activities when they are near good internet access. So we developed a relationship with Xanadu. Xanadu is the publisher that prints OpenStax textbooks. And so what they did was edit our downloadable PDF version and actually put it in a format that has fewer pages. Let me just grab it over here. This is an example of our nursing pharmacology book in print version. You can see it looks like a textbook. It has images and activities within it. And so we're hoping to address that gap for students who do not have good internet access or just have a preference for hard copies. Another final gap, I guess, would be for other faculty interested in using our textbook, but who want to align it to their curriculum. That's the beauty of OER. It can be remixed. And so we've have a partnership with LibreText, who was one of the other open textbook pilot grant awardee winners. They are uploading several different OER textbooks, but they have a wonderful tool called a remixing tool. So faculty can take our book, pull out sections, doesn't even have to be whole chapters. It can be sections of chapters. They can select content from other textbooks if they wish. And then with the click of a button, they can publish that and create their own textbook. So we're really hoping that that helps disseminate our work even further.
Kim, Vince, do you know yet if and how many programs in other states have adopted your text in part or in whole?
That's a really good question. So far we've had over 300 individuals from 200 colleges across the country download the free PDF version. We just started getting in our initial sales information from Xanadu. They offered the textbook, they marketed it to college bookstores and also managed the Amazon listing. At this point, we've had almost 1,000 copies sold. In Wisconsin and California, I know for sure off the top of my head. So we'll have more adoption information data available at the end of this semester.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. So let's go on to student success, because ultimately that's really the reason why we're developing this OER. So as I explained earlier, our textbooks are completely aligned with the curriculum, which is nice. Any other textbook, you know, we pull out pieces of information from textbooks. So this is easily navigable, I guess, by students to see the need to know information according to their curriculum. What we've done in addition to aligning it is we've created several active learning activities using another software product called H5P. H5P allows us to create things like simple things like flashcards, where we use glossary terms and create electronic flashcards, quiz questions, and then they also have a more advanced activity called branching scenarios. And so these branching scenarios are an opportunity, especially for nursing. It's like a virtual simulation. So what we've done is used pre-existing media that we created in a previous grant project that was called the ARISE project. It was the Department of Labor grant. And we take those videos of patients, of nursing, examples of like nursing handoff reports. We have multidisciplinary handoff reports. And we've taken those and put those into these scenarios that play out. And as students watch the video, then they have to make decisions. There's decision points that are implemented within there. And then they branch. So if they have the correct answer, they can move forward. If they have an incorrect answer, then they go back and they read rationale for why that was incorrect and why get the chance to select the correct answer. So that's been very helpful especially during COVID, as faculty are looking for online asynchronous learning activities that they can substitute for clinical time. Those H5P activities have been helpful. And those are located on our website. We'll explain some more about that later.
Kim,
so
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have another question. This seems to be about the book, but it probably is about all of the associated materials you guys have developed. Is there a cost to students or nursing programs to adopt and use these things?
That is a really great question. So everything, the ebook and everything that they can download from Pressbooks is completely free. The Xanadu, when they helped us edit the PDF version, they provide the PDF, the edited PDF for free. Anyone can download that from their website. The print version, this copy, Xanadu created with the intent to keep it an affordable resource, so it sells for a net price about $42. Otherwise, everything else is free.
Thank you.
So what we're looking forward to now at the end of this semester, we will be collecting data regarding student learning outcomes. So across the state of Wisconsin, we'll be collecting information from the course sections that have adopted the OER textbook as the primary resource. We'll be looking at things like retention, withdrawal rates, and then the final success rate. So we'll have that data available later in 2021. Another way that we're collecting information is using surveys. So we have a survey that we provide to faculty and to students incorporated within the textbook, and they can provide feedback in terms of what was helpful and what they may like to see more of. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback about the learning activities that were included. One other thing I want to mention while we're talking about this is sustainability. I know a lot of faculty have concerns about the sustainability of OER textbooks once grant funding is over. And so what we've done in collaboration with Xanadu to address that issue is Xanadu is putting a $5 royalty fee on each print copy. That royalty fee is put into an aggregate account, and it will be sent to CVTC to an earmarked account only for updating these textbooks. So by having that account, once the grant funding is over, we'll be able to reimburse faculty to continue to update the textbooks as new NCLEX RN test plans come out, as new evidence-based research comes out. So these are not static products. These are constant works in process. So especially with the ebook version, we can make immediate updates if necessary to the ebook version. So for example, an example I like to use is CPR. So several years ago, CPR guidelines changed where it went from ABCs to checking a patient's airway and breathing and circulation to immediately starting compressions and then dealing with the airway after that. In commercially published textbooks, it took several years for that update to show up within the text. But within our ebook, when things like that happen, we'll be able to make an immediate change so that students are aware of the new evidence-based practices. So let's go on to personalized learning and technology. And I really talked about this a lot already, I guess, with the H5P, but that's the software that we're using for adaptive learning. So it does provide immediate formative feedback back to the students. We did discover, though, as I mentioned, that if students don't have good internet access, they can't access those materials. So we've also sprinkled in just some kind of check your knowledge questions as they go throughout the chapter. We're continuing to develop virtual simulations using that H5P, but now we've also stepped into the world of virtual reality. So virtual reality is truly using the virtual reality headsets so that a student can become completely immersed in a virtual environment. And research has shown that when they're completely immersed, they have the same kind of emotional reaction to the situation and the patient as if it were live. And so, for example, if you've never tried a virtual reality headset, when you put them on, we have to be careful how we design the rooms, because if there's a virtual chair by the side of the bed, people get so immersed in the situation, they'll try to sit down in that chair, even though it doesn't exist. So that's how engaging it can be. That's true virtual reality. And as we all know, though, with COVID, just going into campus, putting on a headset, there's all kinds of infection control measures now that kind of create barriers for using virtual reality headsets. So what we're developing is using still virtual reality environment that can be completely controlled by the faculty or a sim tech that's playing the voice of the patient, changing the nonverbal reactions of the patient, gestures and facial expressions. And we're using screen broadcasting to share that out to students. So a faculty can sign in using Zoom from anywhere across the country, really. The sim tech operates the scene with the avatar and what's going on with the vital signs. And then the instructor, the students sign in using Zoom, and the instructor can lead the scenario and say, and set it up, do some pre-briefing, and then ask each student to speak with the patient and direct the instructor in terms of what needs to be done. So, for example, the student might say, I'd introduce myself, I would do a patient identification, and then I would get their vital signs. And then either the faculty or the sim tech would go forward and put the blood pressure cuff on the patient and get the other vital signs, and then those readings would be displayed on the screen. So it's really all about critical thinking and developing clinical judgment while they're viewing that on the screen. And it just opens up the possibilities now with remote learning for adding simulation really into any course. So we're really excited about that. We're developing our prototype scenario right now. We'll be sharing it at the WLN conference coming up November 7th, which is virtual. And then from there, we'll be piloting this scenario and then developing the remaining virtual reality scenarios based on that feedback. So let's go on to lessons learned. So some things we've learned, we're about just over 18 months into this grant project. One thing that was very helpful is in the grant narrative, there was pre-established milestones every 6 months throughout the 4 years of the project. And that was really helpful in getting the project off the ground and kind of scoping out our project. Key personnel truly are key. CVTC is leading the project. Our key personnel of the core team includes myself, Vince. We have another librarian that checks all the images used within the textbooks, ensures that they truly are open access, sets the attributions for that. And then we have an instructional technologist that's helping with the H5P and the virtual reality development, and then our instructional designer. So both myself and the instructional designer are nursing educators. So I do think that's very helpful to have subject matter experts as part of this, because as I mentioned, we know the concepts that students truly need to know, we know what they struggle with, and we know techniques that tend to help them learn those concepts. So if you're developing a grant project, I encourage you to consider, SMEs as part of your core team. The other thing that was very helpful as we got started, we attended the Open Ed conference last year. A lot of support there, but we learned about this Rebus's Guide to Publishing. This is an OER resource. The hyperlink is here within the slides. It talks about everything ranging from scoping out the project to creation of the OER to publishing. And so it was very helpful as we were going through the learning process of how do we write these OER resources. At the conferences, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So there's kind of a delay here. I apologize. Are you partnering with a company to create the virtual reality?
That is a good question. So we went through an RFP process. Madison College actually went through an RFP process and selected a vendor called Arch Virtual for their college-wide VR initiative. And so OpenRN is using that same vendor. And the nice thing about that VR vendor is faculty have the option to select any scene. So you can select a med-surg room, a long-term care room, an ER, etc. You can select any avatar. You can select what you want within your scenario.
Fabulous.
So
yeah, is it Arch Virtual?
Arch Virtual, and Acadicus is the name of the software that allows you to do that. And so that was one of the things, one of the gaps that we identified during our advisory committee meetings, is that other products, you're reliant on programming to establish your scenarios. And once we get our scenes set up, that's what we're designing right now, then faculty can create whatever scenario they would like to use.
Wow, awesome, thank you.
Sure. So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about this guided inquiry process. This is something that was shared with us by Vince and his librarians when we first started this process. And this is really a model based on the research process, but we found that it truly applies to the development of OER as faculty go through this process. So that if we start at the bottom under actions, the physical actions as we start developing OERs, they're seeking information, they're exploring other resources that are out there. At that point, their thoughts, they feel very vague about, they may understand what OER is, but the process of developing OER seems very vague. And so the feelings that are associated with that start out with uncertainty. As they start, maybe take the OER 101 course or learn more about OER, they start to become more optimistic. But then as they start, when it's time to actually write the content and they're in that exploration mode, they start to feel confused, frustrated, doubtful. We've sensed this imposter syndrome tends to really kick in at that point. Instructors have said to me, I'm not an expert on this particular topic. How can I write a textbook or chapter about it? And I encourage them, I said, you're the expert in teaching the content. You're the expert in knowing what sources are valuable for students to look at. That's your expertise. So when they struggle with actually starting writing, we encourage them to write it as if they're teaching it. Pretend like you're standing in front of your course is what I say, and write it like you would teach it. And once they start that process and actually get some words on paper, they start to develop more of a sense of clarity and a sense of direction. As we bring it back to the work group and everyone contributes, more information about content that they cover or leveling considerations, they become very satisfied with the final end of the product. There is quite a bit of editing that's involved, though, I do want to say. So once faculty get to this point, when you're writing a textbook, it's so important to have a consistent voice, a consistent structure of every chapter, just small things like using the same vocabulary terms for the same concept throughout. So that's one thing we've also learned is editing is really important. So the instructional designer and myself go through every chapter and create that consistent voice. We were able to find a person that had experience with proofreading commercial textbooks. So she looks through that information. She does several passes actually as it's written in Google Docs and then as we upload it into Pressbooks. But that's kind of our process of development. So I'm going to let Vince talk about the milestones now.
Yeah, so we talk about this project over just a few years or 4 years. So I really wanted to just kind of put it in a perspective for you. So again, we applied for the grant in September of 2018. We were awarded it in March of 2019. So from there, it took us a couple of months to kind of identify that core team, the team members that would be involved with the project. And then one of the first things we did was the training. So OER 101, the training course had started in January. And then the following June, we came out with the very first text, which was nursing pharmacology. So you see, it was just over a year, about a year and a few months before the first text came out. And then our next two texts will come out next summer in 2021, June and August, which is nursing skills and nursing fundamentals. And then the following year, we will see the remaining two, so June 2022 and August 2022, and that's the mental health and then management books. So beginning in January of next year, we'll start releasing some of the virtual reality scenarios, or at least those that have been developed. And then at the end of the day, we look to have everything completed by February of 2023. So a very rough timeline for you, but we just wanted to share. We thought it'd be important for you to help visualize.
I just want to add too, since so many in our audience are nursing faculty or administrators, we are currently we're wrapping up the nursing skills book right now in terms of development. It's going to be going through the final formatting process here throughout the rest of the fall, and we will be piloting that and sending it out for peer review in January or February of 2021. So if you're interested in being a peer reviewer, You can go to our website, which I guess we can just show our next slide now. This is really the go-to place if you're interested in downloading or looking at the ebook, in downloading the free PDF file that's out here. It's a place where you can scroll down to the bottom of the web page and register for performance reports. We submit quarterly performance reports to the Department of Ed, and we email over 330 people have already registered for those performance reports. So that's a way to kind of keep a pulse of what we're releasing when. And that's where you can also register as a reviewer. So you can click a box that says interested in reviewing. And in January, we'll be sending out more information to those that have indicated interest in about the reviewing process. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I know we've heard more about the virtual reality and how you have partnered with Arch Virtual for that, and how people can pull together their own avatars and really set it up to customize it. I'm wondering if do you have any arrangements to help students get the virtual reality goggles? I mean, what is the supply chain there? We're talking about folks who don't always have access to the internet or reliable or high enough speed internet. What can you tell us about that process?
That's a really good question. So we're developing these scenarios. So really the only person that needs to have the headset on would be the sim technician, if you're doing it remotely. So by the sim technician signing in to the Acadicus software and then using screen share, the faculty can share it with students and they do not need the headsets. So technically that's not total immersion VR, it's virtual simulation. But because the avatar will be speaking to them like a patient and they're engaged in telling the instructor what needs to be done next or communicating, they are fully engaged within that.
Sure.
We expect them to be.
All right, great. We do have another question. There's a question about sustainability. I know you had mentioned that there is this $5 that Xanadu had put on the print version. That's probably not going to be though enough to sustain all aspects of it, or does your scoping indicate that would? Otherwise, there are going to be some other pieces for of the sustainability process.
That's a good question. I mean, we'll see what adoption data we get at the end of this semester. So far, as I mentioned, over 1,000 copies were sold within the first month. So once all 5 textbooks are being sold across the country, I do anticipate there'll be quite a large chunk annually to reimburse faculty to update the textbooks. The only other options we'll probably need would be to continue the Pressbooks subscription, which wasn't a large sum. And then our CVTC also has an OER AER committee that will help with sustainability efforts too.
Yes.
I'd also just like to mention that a lot of times we think of it as this huge scope when we go to update something, but in reality, we might just have to update a specific competency or chapter based on revisions. It's not necessarily we're recreating a textbook every so many years. It's
right.
The brunt of the work is done, and now we're just kind of making tweaks and updating it. And the process is coordination, I guess, at that point, and CVTC is helping to coordinate that into the future.
I think that's a really good point, Vince, because if you consider most textbooks with the new editions that come out, sometimes it's kind of difficult to see what's truly new in the new edition. But we have designed the textbook so that it will be easily revised as new evidence-based practices come out. We are scrupulous with our footnotes, as Vince can attest to. So as we're developing the chapters, and really in a way to help students become aware of what are valuable websites to get information. We have footnotes where we can. We direct them to information in the public domain. We use the National Institute of Health websites quite a bit for that. If we can't find it there, then we use peer-reviewed journals, and so we include the DOI if we can, so they can go out and actually read those resources. And so in that way, you know, as new information comes out, we'll be able to specifically find that footnoted the previous information and replace it with new information as needed.
You bet. And it occurs to me too, as I work with the folks at the system level office, and I'm sure this is true at the institutional level too for WTCS institutions, as OER become more a part of the academic and institutional infrastructure, there are people whose job it is, and there will increasingly be people whose job it is to pull together folks for these periodic reviews, for these periodic updates, etc. Are you at that phase yet, or is that yet forthcoming?
We're not at our project. We're not at that phase yet, but the statewide, the WTCS nursing curriculum is there's a curriculum committee that meets at least twice a year, and I think now they're meeting 4 times a year, and so they'll be able to they'll be reviewing and updating the nursing curriculum, and as that happens, then we'll use that information to update the textbooks too. So I really think that our textbooks will hinge on the statewide curriculum.
Yeah. Here's another question, and this is an important one when we think about OER development a lot. Were the instructors compensated for their time and their effort in the beginning of this process, and or will they be compensated moving forward if they make significant contributions to upgrades and changes in the material?
That's an excellent question. So the way we designed it, we use a stipend process. So faculty that are participating on the work groups keep track of the hours that they're spending. Other faculty at CVTC that are on the project, they count hours that they're spending outside of their normal business hours, and all that is submitted using these monthly stipend forms, and we pay out monthly that way. We picked up $40 an hour as kind of a standard reimbursement rate, just based on typical nursing salary, and we just use that same, for simplicity, we use it across the board for all team members.
That's great. That's important. I know there's a lot of invisible work that goes into OER creation and production. Yep. Well,
we estimate just developing one chapter, researching the information, finding images, formatting it, just getting it ready to go to the proofreader is at least 40 hours per chapter. And then when you add all the editing and revisions on top of it, it's probably another 40. So definitely faculty need to be reimbursed for their time. And it's actually been a little bit of a challenge, to be quite honest, with COVID. Faculty, or everyone, is overwhelmed with all the remote learning and everything else that's going on with COVID. So I've actually been very thankful that we have a stipend process, because faculty can work on it when they have time to do so.
Yeah, that's great. Here's a question. What mechanisms are there now, or perhaps in the future, for students to contribute to the curriculum? And I think I know what they're asking. Like, when you talk about the scenarios, like when you are dealing with a family member or a patient who is essentially overwhelmed emotionally, and maybe that's becoming an impediment to serving that person and taking care of that person, I can imagine some pretty good scenarios where people are going to be able to contribute those as either practitioners or student nurses. Is there a mechanism yet, or do you plan for there to be one in the future for students to contribute pieces, whether it's in ancillary materials or to the text themselves as case studies or things like that?
That's a really good question. You know, as part of open pedagogy is, what can students contribute? So at this point, what we've done is we have students on the advisory committee. We've also found a student that's not part of the Wisconsin Technical College, but is a recent high school graduate at another university, that reads through our chapters one by one as they're being developed, because these first 3 books truly are meant to be entry level, are for entry level students. And as experts, sometimes it can be difficult to remember what you don't know as a novice. And so she's been very helpful as she's reading through and saying, not sure what what is Lasix? We need to talk a little bit more about this medication, because it's something that nurses know off the top of their heads, but not students. So we'll continue to use students as reviewers on the advisory committee, and then I think the surveys that will be embedded within the virtual reality scenarios as we're creating will be a great avenue for students to also provide ideas for additional scenarios they'd like to practice.
I'd just
Absolutely.
like to add also, we might be the leaders on creating these resources, but really it's for everybody. So if there is something that you think students should add, or some component that maybe faculty think should be added, it can be remixed, it can be modified to however you'd like it to be. So again, we're creating it, but it's for everyone to use as they see fit. So we know it might not be perfect. There's always room for improvement. So we welcome any improvements to the project, especially in their own instance or scope.
Well, that is
Absolutely. Because
that is
these are really first edition. Everything that we're creating is first edition. So we are very cognizant. There's always room for improvement as these are tried and tested out.
well, and I think you make really great points there, that one of the best ways to localize and adapt the materials is to let students help you with that. Let them read it and say, in this small rural community, we can't offer that. We don't have that resource. And so we need to talk about, how do you know when you transfer to another, different protocols come into the realm of consideration depending on your context. And so does the populations you're serving. So that's huge. And that's the beauty of OER, is that you really can take a chapter and have open pedagogy and say, okay, so here's the chapter as written. How could we rework this to reflect some of the situations in which you have found yourselves in your clinical experiences? So
Exactly.
really powerful. Well, we are at 1:56. I am not seeing additional questions coming through. I guess I have one more question, because I'm thinking about this a lot. What types of, and this might yet evolve, and it might be already deeply embedded, I suspect, being part of the Wisconsin Technical College system, you guys have already given this a ton of thought. But what types of considerations in developing the materials have been given to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because we know this is a huge issue across higher education, and it is particularly an important aspect of open education. I'm wondering if you can speak to that for a moment or two.
Well, in terms of accessibility, that's one of the reasons we chose press books, is because they have automatic things set up within as chapters are being formatted, so that it works within screen readers and things like that to help with accessibility that way. And then we're just cognizant as we develop materials, especially since we're using a lot of media from the previous ARISE project, we're just cognizant of representing diverse students and diverse patients, so that it is, case studies, things like that are set up in a manner that promote diversity and diverse perspectives. I mean, that's part of the reason, with nursing too, you're looking at social determinants of health. So one of the very first chapters in the pharmacology book brings that up. And, we're not just learning tasks and facts, but we're thinking about how to help others access healthcare. And, but with that perspective, we bring that into all aspects of the textbooks and the virtual reality scenarios.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget also that, OER, just by its nature, is very conducive to equity, being free for students on the first day of class. I think that's an overarching theme in the open world, is getting these resources at no cost to students. I think that's really, really a huge component of equity in education.
Sure is, and there's just a lot of great peer-reviewed research indicating that that has a huge helpful impact for reducing the number of withdrawals and drops in a class and increasing student attainment within classes, and then throughput. They take more classes, they get through sooner. There are just a lot of great outcomes simply by having affordable learning materials available on the first day. So
exactly. We're hoping our student learning outcomes prove that even more after this semester. So
I have no doubt that they will. I have to thank you both for a fantastic webinar, and more than that, for doing such important high quality work in the open educational resource space. And please, anything that we need to push out to our folks, whether it's the opportunity to review materials or to attend a course or anything else, keep us in the loop. We're happy to share all the good stuff going on in Wisconsin. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us today. It's been
Thank you.
great.
All right. Bye, Kim. Bye, Vince.
Bye-bye.
Bye.